Now that you're ready to drywall, all your framing's done, your rough-ins are complete, you need to select the type of drywall that you're going to use. If you have space restrictions where you can't bring bigger sheets of drywall down to your basement, then you're going to have to do it all in 4-foot by 8-foot sheets, which will create a lot more tape joints. The easier way, a more professional way to achieve nice, flat, smooth walls is less joints. So what I like to do is take the total length of the walls and match it accordingly to the size of drywall that I can order. You can order 14 foot by 4, you can order 12 by 4, you can order 10 by 4, and you can order 8 by 4. I'm just going to start with this long wall here. From this corner all the way down to the other corner is 25 feet long, which means that when I'm laying my drywall horizontally, that I want to use a 14-foot sheet of drywall and then a 12-foot sheet of drywall to finish, which will create only one joint. So a good idea when you're going through that is to mark up on the wall what you actually need to finish each wall. Then you can make your tally of your finished drywall that you need to order. So on this wall, I need 2 12s and 2 14s. Now for the ceiling in this greater area, I know that I'm gonna have 4 rows of drywall going across here. It measures 17 feet across this way, so I'm gonna choose 12-foot and 8-foot sheets to go up on the ceiling. I'll start with a 12 here, then an 8, then an 8 and a 12, and staggering for the 4 different rows. So I'm gonna jot that down: 4 12s, 4 8s to the ceiling. Okay, so now I'm on this wall here with the window. I'm just gonna measure off the corner, and my 12 feet is by my thumb, so that's just short of 12 feet. I'm gonna order 2 14-footers on this wall so that I don't have any joints except for the one down the center. Okay, so now we're going to drywall this little cubby area. It's just a use of space that was underneath the stairs. I've decided that I'm going to develop it as well. I'm just going to put some cabinets across here and cabinets across here, and put a fridge and a microwave, kind of have a little snack area. So to begin drywalling, I like to take a pen and mark my studs. I'm going to start with my ceiling drywall first in almost all applications of drywall. The reason for that is if you put the wallboard on first, you're not going to have anything holding the edge of your ceiling board up, which vibrations in time will cause cracking to happen. So you want to start with drywalling your ceiling first, and then when you do your walls, push it up tight into the ceiling drywall, keeping that joint tight and strong forever. So what I'm going to do is mark these joists onto the wall so that when I'm doing my screwing, I know where to go. Now I'm going to measure for the ceiling board and set up to install it. So I've got 71 3/4. And I just need to get a width. 41 3/4 tight. So because the drywall is coming up the walls, I can be a little smaller with the drywall so that it's easier to get up there. So I'm going to go with 41 5/8. That's just 1/8 of more space to maneuver the piece of board up into the position. Okay, so there's several different ways to cut drywall. Now that I know that my finished piece for the ceiling over there is 71 3/4 by 41 5/8, I'm going to use a 4x8 sheet of drywall and cut it up to the appropriate size. I'm going to start by measuring the length and cutting off, and then cutting down to the width that I need. So take with my knife or pencil, mark 71 3/4. Mark 71 3/4. So one method is to just mark the 2 indicator lines. Use a straight edge. Set up on your 2 lines. Gently score across the paper face. Like to do it twice, this time keeping in the first cut. If you try to cut it too deep on the first time, you might get a little squiggly and not end up with the best cut. And one more time, freehand, just staying in that crack. Okay, so now that you've got it sufficiently scored, bring the drywall to a point that it could break across. Take your utility knife, carve right through it. Okay, so now we're left with our piece 71 3/4 long. Just got to mark for the width and cut it down too. Okay, so now I've got to measure my width for this sheet of drywall. As you remember, it was 41 5/8. I'm going to mark it in a few spots. Show you a different method for cutting it. 41 5/8. Okay, so when you're removing a thin strip of drywall off the edge, you can use your tape measure, pinch your tape against your knife, nice and firm. I got my thumb on there. Put your knife blade on your indicator point and hold this finger as a guide along the straight edge. So I've got it pinched on the indicator point and my finger on tight. I just have to maintain this position as I slide across and I should have a nice straight line. Now you can see here that I have hit my indicator point, which means that I stayed on track while I was doing that. This method does take a little while to get used to, but it definitely saves some time if you can get used to it. Just gonna score it one more time. Okay, so now that I've got my piece of drywall cut to size, got my screw gun ready to go, got my drywall screws. They use a nice magnetic tip so you can wiggle it around and it stays on. I'm ready to lift it up. Use my indicator points just to get a few screws in before I finish screwing it all off. Looks good. So on joints, I like to do 5 screws. So one at each end, one in the center, and I'll add one here and here. And on joists that are in the field, I like to just put 4. Alright, so I've got sufficient amount of screws into this board. Now I'm going to be ready to start measuring my walls. I'm going to start with the back wall, 2 pieces, starting at the top, bringing it up to the ceiling drywall to make a nice tight joint, screw it off, fit in the bottom piece, and then work my way out of this little area. So now I'm just going to take some measurements for the back wall here and begin to install that drywall. 41 3/4. 78.5. I've realized that there's no backing stud here to hold the drywall on either side. You can see it's not here as well. It makes a lot more sense not to cut this plastic and get a piece of studding in there. You rarely are able to seal the plastic as well as it would have been before. So what I like to do is, in areas that I run into this situation, I've got a light gauge angle iron and I've cut it to the floor to ceiling height. Going to install this surface mounted on this stud, and then that gives me this edge of the metal track to screw the drywall into. Okay, so got my pieces cut. My ceiling board is in. When I'm starting with the walls, I like to start with the top piece and push it up tight, creating that nice straight edge here, which you'll notice as I'm fastening it together. Got my pencil. Gonna mark the studs to the ceiling. Try not to use felt pen up on the drywall. It might still show through when you go to paint. Okay, so you can see my piece is in here nice and tight. You can also see that I've got it pushed up as tight as I can to the ceiling. So I'll grab with one hand, pull it up as tight as I can, get a screw in the bottom. There we go. And then I'll follow the same thing that I did in the ceiling. 4 screws on the center studding, 5 on the edge. Use my indicator lines up at the top here. I know where that stud is. So I'm able to tell where the studs are because I've been doing it for a little while, so I can just mark at the top, mark at the bottom, and hit them. If you're a little bit new at drywalling, you're probably going to want to use your straight edge and connect the lines so that you can get nice straight screw lines without missing. Alright, so this piece is finished. Okay, so I've got my last piece cut for the bottom. Just going to use my pencil, mark the studs onto the floor. I can see the top of the stud here. Now, I've left it off the floor a little bit because you don't want to cut it too tight and try to fit it in there and cause it to break. You'll just end up with not a straight edge. And we've got some baseboards going on that will cover that. So this gap here, you want to close completely before you start screwing. So take a crowbar, put it underneath. That joint's nice and tight. Alright, so temporarily fastened. I'm just going to finish screwing it off and we should be done this back wall. So I've got my pieces cut for these two walls now. I'm just going to start again by marking my studs on the ceiling and on the floor so I know where they are, and then proceed with installing this top sheet tight against the ceiling again. You can see in this wall we're going to run into two electrical boxes. I've got a drywall router that will go through, hit the edge of the steel, jump to the outside, and spin around this box and cut it perfectly around. So I'll just go through that as well. Okay, so before I fasten this sheet up, I need to put some indicator points so I can stick the router bit right here without hitting this or any of the wires. Same with this box. So I'm going to measure off this back wall to center of the box, 25.5, and then from the ceiling, 35. Okay, so tight up on the ceiling, tight up on this inside corner. Okay, now that I've got that temporarily attached at the ceiling, I've got my indicator points here. I'm going to get my router ready, safety equipment on, and proceed to router these openings out. Okay, so I've got my indicator point here. This is the drywall router. This is the bit that will go around the metal box to cut the drywall perfectly flush around the edges. So you begin by turning it on, pushing it tight, the drywall tight against the box, inserting it just 3/4 of an inch to not nick the wires that are inside the box. Push to the edge of the box, jump over the edge to get to the outside, and then proceed in a counterclock motion around the box. So I'm ready to begin. So you can see that that's perfectly cut around the outside of the box. I didn't stick it in too far, so I didn't nick any of the wires. So we're good to go. Okay, so now I've got my electrical boxes cut. I'm just going to proceed with finishing screwing this off. Okay, now that you've got your drywall installed, it's time to take a look back at your work and make sure everything's done correctly. You've got enough screws. You get the screws that miss studs out of the wall. Gonna have to trim some of the loose paper that will be hanging around on damaged areas of the drywall. One very important thing about drywall is the screws themselves. Most of my demos, you're gonna see me use a screw gun. Screw gun is really helpful because it's got a stopper on the front that puts the screw just below flush of the paper, not breaking through the paper. If you're using a cordless drill, you might tend to run the screw in too far and break the paper, which is essentially a useless screw. So I'm just looking for that along the walls and tightening down or adding screws as necessary. So, oops. Okay, so I've just put 2 screws in with a standard cordless drill. Again, what I was mentioning, that these 2 screws are done incorrectly. They're too far down and they've broke through the paper. So like I said, if you're going to use a regular cordless drill or a regular drill, there is adapters that you can get at a hardware store to turn your cordless drill into a screw gun, which will stop the screws flush, and then you've got your drywall installed correctly.